However, the city of Port Angeles has decided to conduct its own quasi-election on the issue of fluoride, sending out a survey to those users of water. And one council member has said that they will vote solely on the results of this survey. Fluoride has been in use in the United States for decades. So what is the contention? What are the issues? You, the members, last week asked to be better informed. So this is the first of two-part meeting, back-to-back, where both sides will be here to present their information and take questions from the audience. With that said, today we start with the opposition to fluoride. We are very honored to have with us Dr. Bill Osmunson, a dentist from Neah Bay, who has traveled this way to impart upon us the information he wishes to share. So please welcome Dr. Bill Osmunson.
Thank you very much. It's very gracious of you to have me here. This is where I do my shopping, so it's a great excuse to come here again. And this kind of feels like home to me, even though my residence is on the Coast Guard base. My interest in fluoride started, of course, before dental school in my master's program. And I had professors there that spoke on both sides of the issue, but they said it quietly to me because they said, you don't want to speak up against fluoridation, otherwise you will lose your job or you will not get a job. In dental school, they were the same way. This is something that you must accept because this is policy. I promoted fluoridation for about 25 years, and my patients finally said to me, but what about freedom? And I remember opening my mouth going, and I had no answer for them because fluoridation takes away your freedom. This is, I don't eat in Port Angeles as much as I would like because I'm medicated with this, I'm medicated with that, I'm medicated with that. Everything has the fluoride, the water or fluoride in it from different types of pesticides and post-harvest fluids, etc., etc. We'll get into that more in a bit. So why did I change my mind? This is a matter of judgment. And I'll give you some information, and I could speak on the other side just as well as I could speak on this side because I promoted the other side. I don't want to say anything disparaging to anyone else personally who's in favor of fluoridation, simply because the fact that for 25 years I was there also. So I respect the fact that they haven't looked at the science, but it's time that we start looking more at the science rather than just mimicking policy. Any one of these are reasons to vote no on fluoridation. And these are just a few of the many. Give everyone freedom. I won't spend a lot of time on that, but this is the land of the free. And what you're doing when you're voting is you're saying, that person over there who doesn't have teeth, they need fluoride. That person over there who's an infant, they need fluoride. Mother's milk is wrong. That person over there who's sick, that person who's allergic, they all are going to get it whether they like it or not. So we violate the Constitution of freedom, individual freedom. Now yesterday I was on the radio with Dr. Pollack and he said, oh, but we have the freedom to vote. Yeah, but we don't have individual freedom. The Constitution doesn't say, oh, well, we do it by the majority and everybody else, to heck with them. It's just the majority that gets their way. Swallowing fluoride is not FDA approved. Now the Food and Drug Administration is very clear. We pay our taxes to get the best scientists possible to make this kind of judgment. This is not the city council's job. This is not your job. This is not my job. We hire the experts to make this decision. It's a little bit like saying, okay, well, we're going to have the voters vote on a new library. Yes, okay, well, we can vote on a new library. That's cool. But hang on a second. Does that mean that the voters say that you can just throw out all the laws on construction, on safeties, building codes? We don't need to worry about that because the voters said they wanted a library. No, if the voters say they want a library, fine. Actually, the Supreme Court in Washington said really it's the city council that's supposed to. They can't wash their hands of this problem. They're the ones that need to make a decision because grandma down the street doesn't have the time or the expertise to make this very complicated decision. So let's get the FDA. Why don't the proponents just simply go to the FDA and get approval? I did it for a dental device. They are good scientists. I went through the process. It's a good process. They have good questions, and they demand good results. Well, we'll get into that a little more. Many are swallowing too much fluoride. It's in all your foods here. How much are you getting? We don't know. How much do you want? Nobody really knows. Because teeth have the same amount of fluoride in them whether they have dental decay or not. So what's the optimal amount of fluoride for the tooth? Because that's the whole purpose of this thing. We have no clue. 70 years later, we don't know because they all have the same. So how much do we want for the bloodstream to get to the tooth? We don't know. So how much do we want in our water? Well, we don't know because we don't know where we're getting other things. We don't know what we need for the blood. And we don't know what we need for the tooth. That doesn't sound like a lot of confidence to me. Swallowing fluoride is not effective, according to the FDA. It's not effective. Now, you may feel like you have more information, and the doctors trust us. They say they know more. But in reality, the Food and Drug Administration says it's not effective. Swallowing fluoride is not safe, according to the FDA. We'll get into some of that. And stopping fluoridation does not increase dental caries. So if you stop it, it's not going to make any difference. Okay, let's look at swallowing fluoride is not FDA approved. The FDA sent a letter to 35 companies that were making fluoride. There is no substantial evidence of drug effectiveness as prescribed, recommended, or suggested in its labeling. It's not effective. At least the evidence doesn't show it's effective, but the city thinks that they know best. Oh, hang on a second. You know, the city's trying to figure out what's best. But the doctors who say, trust us, say, well, we've been doing it for so long, it must be safe. Do not swallow, according to the FDA. Now, toothpaste tubes have different labeling on it, variable labeling. Okay, well, it's not going to all say the same thing. I took a picture of mine. When I first started, I was walking down the hallway of my office and I go, what's the next controversy in dentistry? I know that the TMJ problem is universities are not doing quite the right thing there. And I know that mercury, it's not safe in the sewer, and it's not safe in the trash, and I can't mail it in the post office because it's too dangerous for the postal workers, and yet we're putting it in everybody's mouth. Now, that doesn't make sense, and so you start looking at the research and you go, no. You don't want mercury in your mouth. And that's the fillings that were done for many years. So then I thought, well, what's the next thing that might not be right with my profession? And I looked down there, I saw this big basket of this toothpaste that was given out to patients. And I thought, well, maybe I should read the label. I hadn't done that. In fact, I didn't know if there was a label. Yeah, there is a label. And it says, drug facts. Well, the FDA, this is approved. On the outside of the tooth, like suntan lotion, it's approved. Drug facts. Well, I know it's a drug. Do not swallow. How much? It says, do not swallow. Well, how much do we not swallow? What about do not swallow so hard to understand? Do not swallow. It's very simple. Now, yesterday, Dr. Pollack said, well, but that's on many different products and many different things. So, I mean, it's just a standard label on toxic things. Well, ask a child, what does do not swallow mean? It means do not swallow. And then they say, use a pea-sized amount for children. And now they're talking about a smear size, even smaller. That happens to be, according to Dr. Pollack, who I was talking on the radio with, twice the size of what it should be. Okay? When we brush our teeth, we use half that amount of toothpaste, especially for children. And if you swallow that much, what should you do? Call the Poison Control Center. Okay? So don't swallow it. But if you do swallow a pea-sized amount, call the Poison Control Center. Why? Because it's a poison. Now hang on a second. How much are they concerned about? 1/4 milligram of fluoride, the same as in 1 glass of fluoride. Now this is a very large glass of fluoride, but this FDA says do not swallow. And if you have a glass of water, the FDA says do not swallow it. How about your coffee? Do not swallow it. There's something's wrong when the city forces me to swallow in every glass of water the same amount that the FDA says don't swallow. Something's wrong there. Okay, Foundry says articles intended for use. That's the key. What is the intent of use? Well, there's no dispute on that. Intent of use is for Tooth decay. White State Board of Health, fluoride is a legend drug. Yeah, we know it's a drug. The FDA remains, this is a quote from the Water Law Office. The FDA remains responsible for regulating the addition of drugs to the water supply for healthcare purposes. General Counsel. The FDA testified to Congress that fluoride is a drug. Well, you know, Dr. Pollack yesterday says, but Bill, the FDA approved bottled water, fluoride in bottled water. And I go, whoa, Dr. Pollack, no. Lawyers went, got a new law passed, and they went that allows the FDA to be notified by manufacturers that they're going to do something. If CDC or Public Health Service says, yeah, this is a good thing, then all they have to do is notify the Food and Drug Administration. So the bottled water never went through the approval process. It was just circumvented around through Congress, which the same thing with sulfurofluoride. Dow Agrochemical went around the EPA to get that approved. Okay, after 7 years of fluoride, still no gold standard studies on effectiveness. That's one of the reasons FDA says no. There aren't good studies. FDA says the final manufacturer is responsible for research to gain FDA approval. Why in the world does the city and all these people who are promoting fluoride require you, the patient, to provide the research to prove that it's not safe? We want proof that it's not safe. We want a standard level way up here. That's not what the FDA says. The FDA says is the final manufacturer, before they sell it, has to come to us for approval. And who's the final manufacturer of the fluoridated water? The city. They're putting this stuff together and shipping it out and selling it. So I am very willing to work with the city at no charge to go get FDA approval, to try. See, I can't because I'm not the manufacturer. I can't. EPA says no national primary drinking water regulation may require the addition of any substance for prevention of healthcare purposes unrelated to the contamination of drinking water. Yeah, that's what the Safe Drinking Water Act says, but what does it mean? I think I understand it, but I'm not real sure. So I contacted the EPA, and the EPA said the Safe Drinking Water Act prohibits the deliberate addition of any substance to drinking water for health-related purposes other than disinfection of the water. You can make the water safe and treat the water, but you can't treat people. Okay, that's what the Safe Drinking Water Act says. Well, what is the city doing? They're in violation of the Safe Drinking Water Act. Washington State Department of Health relies on the EPA to determine the safety and efficacy of fluoridation, but they don't do it. That's like saying, let's go to NASA and have them determine what it is. That's not it. What did the scientists at the EPA say? They say, in summary, we hold that fluoridation is an unreasonable risk. That is, the toxicity of fluoride is so great and the purported benefits associated with it are so small, if there are any at all, that requiring every man, woman, and child in America to ingest it borders on criminal behavior on the part of governments. That's the EPA scientists speaking through their union because they tried to speak otherwise and they were fired. They got the job back. CDC says it's not CDC's task to determine what levels of fluoride in water are safe. That's not their job. They just promote. They're just marketing, okay? Now, this graph is a little bit maybe easy to get mixed up. This is the toxicity of the stuff that the city puts in the water. Here's Roundup. That much of Roundup is considered enough grams to kill a person, over 300. Then we have ammonia, lead, metallic arsenate, mercury chloride, fluorosilicic acid, sodium cyanide, nerve gas, plutonium, and strychnine. Well, strychnine, cyanide, nerve gas, they're all about the same as the fluorosilicic acid that is put in your water. So, would you want the city to add strychnine in here if it might cut down on some bacteria? In you might treat cancer or something. Would you say, let's treat everybody for cancer? You know, the reason that we're putting it in the water is because of Halloween. Well, not so. But really, seriously, long time ago, when they first started talking about fluoride, they said, what can we do? The sugar industry was the big one. They said, what can we do about tooth decay? Too many people are getting tooth decay. Somebody said, well, use fluoride. So the sugar industry goes, whoa, what a great opportunity. We can try to counteract the effects of so much sugar. Okay, But this is what we're putting in the water. This is all similar in toxicity. Very, very toxic. That's what we're talking about. A highly toxic substance, which the FDA says do not swallow. Many are swallowing too much. I've already gone over that pretty much. Health and Human Services suggested that they don't recommend stuff. They advise those that are doing it, lower the fluoride concentration. So we know for 10 years, many have been hurt. Hang on a second, not everybody drinks the same amount of water. What they're talking about is everybody drinking 1 liter of water. Is this about a liter of water? Okay. That's how much they say people are ingesting every day and soaking themselves down when they shake it. Okay, so that's right. But some people don't drink hardly any water. And some people drink up to 10 liters of water a day. So when what percentage of the population does the city really want to protect? Do they want to protect everybody in the room? Or do they want to protect just up to the 90th percentile? Or to the 95th percentile? If they're wanting to protect everybody, then they're going to have to start looking at some of the problems. Those who drink a lot more water than others. But for those promoting fluoride, they think of it and they talk about it as 1 liter of water a day. Not everybody. Some drink over 10 liters of water a day. Okay. So when we look at studies in research, we have to have a margin of safety. And some this is National Research Council, this is the top science people, some subpopulations, some of us, consume much greater quantities of water than the 2 liters per day of the 90th percentile. But that's what the EPA looks at, it's the 90th percentile. They say, to heck with the 10% who are drinking too much water, you stupid guys, you shouldn't be doing that. So we're going to look at 90th percentile, because some people drink so much. But there are many studies that are showing that 3.4 parts milligrams per liter is actually, well, I'll get it here. 7 IQ loss, 45 studies are showing that at close to this, or just slightly above this, or slightly below it, that they're getting 7 IQ points lower in those communities. Okay, a lot of times they'll show, well, mother's milk, most samples, no fluoride. This kind of decay that we get on the top teeth, the baby teeth, fluoridation is not going to help that, because the fluoridation is not going to counteract sucking on a bottle when a baby goes to bed at night. Okay? Just not going to happen. They'll show these pictures, but that's not what happens. Fluoridation doesn't do it. Dental fluorosis only occurs, that's a toxic sign of excess fluoride that a person has swallowed. It's a biomarker of too much fluoride. And it only occurs when younger children consume too much fluoride, when the teeth are developing under the gums. So if a child has too much fluoride, when the teeth are developing up to about age of 8, that means they'll have dental fluorosis and they've gotten too much fluoride. This is some of the dental fluorosis. CDC says 41% of adolescents, 12 to 15, have dental fluorosis. In other words, 41% are getting too much fluoride. What does the city want to do in protecting people? Oh no, just the majority for us, only 50%. Well, you know why it's only 41%? Because they redefined what dental fluorosis was. It went up to 85%, and then they go, whoa, 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 we're going to redefine this because it's too much. Okay? That's nice treatment there. That happened to cost about $1,200. It has to be redone, $12,000. Has to be redone every 15 years. And the people who are promoting fluoridation, they don't talk about that. Here's the EPA. This graph is really an important one, a very interesting one. We got to look at this. And all the percentage of children above the black line are getting more fluoride than what they should. Okay? Now, but that's assuming they say that fluoride is 33% safer than what they thought it was. What it used to be when everybody's having problems, now they're going to declare it safer, and it's still real bad. Infants are not included, no one below 6 months of age, because all of them, if they're on formula with Port Angeles water, are getting too much fluoride. And they don't include the 10% of the people who are drinking a whole lot of more water. Okay? So that's how they come up with it. Only that many showing too much fluoride. Okay, American Dental Association, after 60 years of community water fluoridation, we still do not know how much fluoride is required to prevent dental caries. I don't know how much, okay? Swallowing is not effective. 97% of Europe governments and dental associations, China, Israel, Japan, do not fluoridate. Why? Because it's all the steps that I told you there. Here's a whole bunch of countries that do not fluoridate, and here's some that do add fluoride. The United States has more people into the fluoridate than all the rest of the world. All of them have dropped decay over the last, 40 years to similar low levels. Why? Well, it wasn't fluoride, because these countries are not using fluoride. Well, they do use a little bit of fluoride salt. But that still doesn't make any difference. They've all dropped, and those that use fluoride salt, don't use fluoride, it's all the same. In public health, we say that a public health intervention needs to be judged at the community at large. Looking at the public, is it working or not? Not in a test tube, but in the public at large. Now, I ranked the states in the United States. That's international. Ranked the states in the United States on the whole percentage of the population fluoridated. Some almost none, and Washington D.C. 100% of people. Then I ranked the results of the government saying parents reporting good teeth, and it's all the same. There's good teeth for the wealthy that make any difference. When we add the poor, well, it's still, there's no common cause with fluoridation. It's all the same. Here's where I made my mistake, thinking I was seeing that there was a benefit. I thought there was a benefit because I was comparing the wealthy with the poor. And like I've told many people, raise minimum wage and you're probably going to do more for decay than you will with fluoridation. Here's another one. This one starts at 1930 up to 1990. We can see here that decay has dropped roughly in half before fluoridation started. And it wasn't fluoride that caused the decline. This is fluoride afterwards. Now, did fluoride help here? We don't know, but the research says it's uncertain how it's affected. Here's another one. This Journal of American Dental Association. We can see dental fluorosis increases with higher concentrations of fluoride in the water. Yeah, we know that. Okay? But what happens when we see the decay caries experience? Almost no fluoride here. And when we get up just a little more fluoride here, then we see that there's actually more decay as we get increase in fluoride. Well, we know that. And there's almost no drop. So this is what we're talking about. This is the good teeth here, and then you see the difference between that and that is why we fluoridate. That's the huge benefit. There's no huge benefit there, and if people ingest just a little more fluoride, they start getting more decay. That's why we don't see a benefit anymore. Now, why is there a problem with the research? Well, there's a whole bunch of reasons why the research has been very, very poor. And the FDA says it's not quality research. I mean, I won't go through this. I don't have time, but I can email it to you later if you want. The Cochrane Review, 2015. Again, there's some benefit, but that was historic. We don't know if it works now. And there's lots of reasons why it doesn't work. Swallowing fluoride is not safe. This is the one, my final one. Stopping fluoridation it just doesn't work. But swallowing fluoridation, this is the last one because it's about safety. And safety, they just don't like to talk about safety. If there's any tiny smidge of not safety, then fluoridation has to be stopped. And so they don't admit that there's any, except for dental fluorosis. Now, dental fluorosis, they say, is just cosmetic. It's kind of like if I took this knife here and I went out to your car and I said, hi, on your, paint with my knife. Don't worry about it. Your car runs just as fine. It's just cosmetic. No big deal. Now, you may not mind it because your truck is not doing so well, but you might. Oh, I'm sorry. But even a guy like this thinks his truck needs to look pretty, okay? Well, what about teeth? A lot of people don't want to have their teeth scratched up looking bad. Okay. So what did the National Council unanimous agreement that the EPA's maximum contaminant fluoride is a contaminant. Why are we contaminating our water when there's lots of other sources of fluoride? Contamination for fluoride is too high. Why? Because of tooth damage, rheumatoid and osteoarthritic like pain. joint stiffness, joint, like arthritis. That's the kind of feeling that people get when they get too much fluoride. Bone cancer, bone fractures, thyroid, diabetes and obesity increases when there's thyroid reduction, kidney damage, reproductive problems, lower IQ and increased mental retardation, and allergies, gastrointestinal disorders. Man, there's so many things here. This is a real serious problem, okay? Now, what the people who are promoting fluoride say, Bill, you have to bring us absolute proof. I had one guy say, oh, look outside. How many people do you see out there that are falling over dead from fluoride? Well, you know, there's different things than just falling over dead from fluoride. And there's synergistic effects that adding different chemicals start to add up on us. And there's many different things. Okay, the EPA agrees that an aggregate exposure to fluoride, that is fluoride from everywhere, does not meet the safety standard of the Federal Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act, Section 408. Okay, fluoride maximum contaminant level goal is not protective of the effects of fluoride on teeth and bones. Fluoride maximum contaminant level goal is not protective of other neurotoxic, endocrine, and renal effects of fluoride. EPA has not adequately protected children. EPA cannot determine the safety of sulfurofluoride. That's the new post-harvest fumigant that Dow Agrochemical puts on your eggs and your foods and everything to have it give it a longer shelf life. And fluoride in the absence of developmental neurotoxic study, a neurotoxin. They don't even have one, okay? EPA has underestimated exposure. We're getting too much. EPA has committed procedural errors in violation of the Administrative Act. So here's some of the dental fluorosis. Yeah, it's happening. It's a risk. But what about fluoride does make the tooth harder, at least on the outside. So when we make the tooth harder, those of you who are doing any kind of construction know that hard is nice, but it can also make it more brittle and break. So what we have is we do see an increase in complete cusp fractures in more fluoridated areas. Where there's no fluoridation, it's about 2%, and where there's 19% of the population, about 4.5%. And when we have most of the population fluoridated, it's closer to 70% of visits to the dental office are complete cusp fractures. Okay, I'd much rather do a complete cusp fracture than work on a baby tooth. Okay, here's the fluoride bomb. When the tooth is hard on the surface, the decay can get inside the tooth rapidly. Low iodine, severe damage to the human body, lowering of IQ, 8 to 10 points, several studies. 21% retardation with fluoride at 3 points, that's like drinking about 4 liters of water a day, compared to 3.4% where it's low fluoride. 45 human and over 100 animal study reports brain damage. EPA margin of exposure should be, according to the EPA in one section of the EPA, says should have a margin of exposure of at least 1,000. Because there's too many people are drinking different amounts of water, different people have different sensitivities. You need a safety factor of 1,000. But the Office of Water uses a 1-to-1 safety factor. No safety on this whole thing. Because there are already kids getting too much fluoride, so there's no safety. Here's some studies showing that the water parts per million of what they're showing IQ loss. Okay, right down to 0.7 IQ loss, 0.8 IQ loss. That's assuming people drink 1 liter of water, that they're not drinking more water. That's assuming they don't get more fluoride from their grape jelly or their wine or all these other products that have lots of fluoride in them. Mechanically deboned meat, etc. Clear on up here, all of these studies are within the EPA's MCL. That's why some of the EPA are saying it's not protected. Broadband. Now here's a study that they're going to bring up, and they did it to City Council. That they say, but this shows that there's no problems with the brain. Fluoride doesn't cause problems. Fluoridation doesn't cause problems. Okay, broadband was incapable of detecting IQ loss from the fluoride. The study wasn't able to do that. Most people not on fluoridated water were with fluoridated pills. In other words, whether you get the fluoride from your food, whether you get the fluoride from a pill, whether the city dissolves it in the water, whether you dissolve it in the water, or whether you dissolve the pill in your tummy, it makes no difference. You're getting the fluoride. Doesn't make any difference where you get the fluoride. It's still the fluoride. And so what he did is he compared fluoridated water with fluoride pills. And he says, well, it doesn't look like there's any difference here. But that's not the only problem with it. There are 11 confounding factors he didn't control for. And the non-fluoridated water is considered some of the most corrosive in New Zealand, where they feel that enough lead is going into that water to cause a 4 IQ point drop just from the lead. None of that was controlled. Okay, of some of the studies that the Harvard Choi, a study from Harvard, looked at, finding 7 IQ point loss from these studies, all of them except one, the consistency of the studies is what we would call robust, concerning. I mean, this is really major. National Toxicology Program, I've been working with them. They're just starting to do a review on this because the brain is very, very important. I want to get into that just a little bit, why the brain is important, in case some of us don't realize it. But here, the whole IQ curve moves down with fluoride. It's not just the mentally retarded, it's not just the gifted, it's everybody moves down. Now, to these people in here, you're going to have a hard time detecting much difference in IQ. You say, well, we're doing better in IQ. Yeah, we're also not having leaded gas anymore, which raised our IQ. This gives a graph of, say, 260 million people. We have 6 million mentally retarded down here, 6 million gifted there. But if we have a 5-point IQ decrease, that means we got 9.4 million mentally retarded and about 2.4 here. So it's less than half of the gifted and more than 50% increase in this because of the bell curve shift. Now, if there was a 0.038 IQ loss, that would wipe out any annual cost savings that anyone is speculating that might help. But the cost savings are crazy because what they do to show that there's a cost savings is they will assume that there's a benefit. First of all, the studies, you read them, and there's so many assumptions and everything, but they'll assume that there's a benefit. Once they assume there's a benefit, then they'll say, we estimate the cost of this much, and we will assume there's no risk. So if you assume there's no risk and you assume there's a benefit, then this is how much would be saved. But even if there was a 0.038 IQ loss, that would wipe out any cost savings. And nothing about teeth or anything. This is an important graph, and what I want you to look at is I've knocked out all the middle sections so you can see the numbers quickly. This is the very low IQ, and this is the very high IQ, and the numbers just go down, 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 down. But out of the labor force for 1 month, much higher. Unemployed more than 1 month, much higher. Divorced 5 years, much higher. Percentage of children with IQ in the bottom decile mothers, much higher. Illegitimate baby, much higher. Lives in poverty, much higher. Ever incarcerated, much higher. Chronic welfare, much higher. High school dropout, much higher. Are we really wanting to knock the IQ of our children? And what we're seeing in animals, that it's not just that child at that period, but it goes on genetically in mice for 3 generations, and then they quit the study because it's kept on going. When we cut the IQ, the DNA, when we damage the genetics, we're damaging it for the next 70 to 80 years from what we're doing in our water here. This is really, really serious. Is it happening in the United States? Well, again, I ranked the states based on the percentage of fluoridation, and I entered in government data from 1992. The states with the low fluoride intake have much less mental retardation. If you get more, it's about a half a standard deviation higher, which is about 8 IQ. Similar to all the other studies. We can see that the adults is not so much, but they didn't have as much fluoride back then. Now the children have more fluoride, we see the IQ there. Now, the problem with this is that there's scattered way off. There's lots of other problems in here besides just that. But this is an indication, just a little another nail in the coffin. Not proof. Lead blood levels are higher in fluoridated area. Average blood level, black, Mexican, white, and where we have more fluoride, there's more lead in the blood. Why is there more lead in people's blood where there's more fluoride? Well, that's because the fluoride leaches out the lead out of the pipes, the plumbing, the brass faucet fixtures, and all that. The other thing is that there is some lead, usually, in the waste product of the phosphate fertilizer companies. That's where we get our fluoride from. In fact, some places now we're not getting enough fluoride for everybody in the United States, so we buy it from China. They're waste products. Japan, they're industrial waste product. We buy it from these foreign countries and they dump it in here. The good news is that much of it is a calcium fluoride, which is less toxic, much less toxic than the hydrofluorosilicic acid and sodium fluoride that is added to the city water. So it's less toxic, but it doesn't dissolve as well in the water, and so it plugs up the equipment, and the cities don't like that as much. Examples of fluoride chemical sources: toothpaste, fish meal, especially bone meal, especially when it's mechanically deboned because it takes the calcium. That's where the fluoride and calcium love each other. So if you mechanically debone it, that takes the bone off, raises the calcium, but also raises the fluoride. What structure in the body has the very most concentration of fluoride? The pineal gland. The pineal gland is right up at the base of the brain where lots of blood goes around it, and this is one of the hormone endocrine functions, and it regulates sleep and it regulates melatonin, and it calcifies. Well, that's the same thing that happens in other parts of the body. It's the kidney stones and the gallstones and all these. There's an increase in the fluoride and calcium binding together and creating those. I've had several people, I said, just get rid of your fluoride. Don't use your fluoride toothpaste. Don't do any more fluoride, and see how that does. It takes a little bit of time because it takes 20 years with a half-life of fluoride in the body. So if you quit eating your fluoride now, it's going to take 20 years to get half of that fluoride out. It's very slow. But no one yet has had more kidney stones when I had them stopped. Endorsements versus law. No legally authorized agency has approved both safety and efficacy of ingesting fluoride for prevention of care. To me, the FDA is primary, is the key. Any questions? I can go on for hours.
Questions?
Yes.
You are talking about fluoride not being effective when ingested. Do you believe, or is there scientific evidence that there are any benefits to fluoride applied directly to the teeth, either through toothpaste or through fluoride treatments at a dentist when it is not swallowed?
Excellent question. This is the topical versus systemic. This is, do I swallow it or do I paint it on the teeth? The FDA has approved toothpaste, and I think it does have some benefit. Now, do I use fluoridated toothpaste? No. But because I don't want to eat lots of candy either. I mean, I do, but I don't. I love it, but I try to reduce my sugar intake. But yes, instead of throwing chemicals at the problem, let's work with our diet. Let's work with our cleaning, because the cleaning is going to help the periodontal and everything. But the FDA says it does have benefit, but don't swallow it. What about at the dental office? Well, let's look at it from a FDA standpoint. It's not FDA approved, but let's look at it from an economic standpoint. If you charge $30 a patient, you see them twice a year, that's $60. You have 1,000 patients, that's $60,000. How long does the dentist spend on that? Nothing. So they think they're doing a good job, they think they're doing a benefit, and there's 60 grand in their pocket. That's not too bad. So there is, I mean, I don't think very many dentists look at it that way, but that's the facts, and it's not going to escape them. And so there's a lot of push, especially in the corporate managed, which I have worked with, and out at Nia Bay, there's a big push of fluoride, but less and less. I'm a heavy duty on this fluoride thing, as you can tell. And the Indian Health Service is cutting back on the promotion of fluoride more and more and more, because they're seeing the handwriting on the wall. This is causing problems, and it's going to backfire. Any other questions? Yeah.
So, topical application, does it make a difference whether it's on children or adults? Is there a benefit for adults different than children?
That's an even better question. The FDA approves both, okay? But do not swallow. And the children's teeth, as they're just coming on out, the fluoride will help harden that outside of the tooth. But the decay, once it cracks through a tiny little hole in the tooth, then it can explode inside easily. And so there's controversy amongst the dentists about this, but my biggest concern is children swallow their toothpaste. For example, my daughter at 11 years of age, I'm telling her don't swallow. I mean, that was kind of well known, don't swallow toothpaste. And I walked in one night at about 1 o'clock in the morning when she was brushing her teeth after a concert we'd been to, and I started watching her. Well, I'm a dentist and she's the kid. And she looked at me, "Dad, what are you doing?" I said, "I'm watching you brush your teeth. I want to make sure you don't swallow the toothpaste." She's in Nashville, a country western artist, so she's really, country western. And she rolls her eyes, "Dad, I know how to brush my teeth." And she brushes her teeth. And I said, "But be sure to spit before you swallow." So what happened is she leaned over the sink and she went like this. You see my throat? Just went swallow, spit. Because it's a natural reflex. Most kids swallow it. It tastes good. Or they swallow some of it. So how do you make sure that that kid, well, you use a tiny smear, you use a tiny pea-sized amount, and then you watch them and make sure that their throat doesn't go, and you have them rinse it out 2, 3, 4 times. And then is it a benefit? There's some benefit to the topic.
How about for adults?
How about the what?
For adults?
For adults? I don't want fractured teeth. I don't want a complete cusp fracture. I don't think my teeth need to be any harder. They're plenty hard. I don't use fluoride toothpaste anymore, and I think that's one of the big pushers of the fluoride. They want it to all appear safe. And when I'm talking, my colleagues that are professors who are opposed to fluoridation say, Bill, don't get into the topical aspect of it. Don't be opposed to topical. Now you're wiggling the big tiger's tail, Colgate, Crest. You don't want to do that. Personally, I don't. It's up to you, but be sure to spit it. It's FDA approved. Any other questions? Yeah.
I am a state certified water operator, and there is no way I would advocate adding fluoride to the water out anywhere. I know that Forks has been fluoridating for some time. Can you tell us how long they've been fluoridating, and tell us if there are no cavities in children in Forks?
Well, of course there are lots of cavities in Forks. Are there fewer dentists in Port Angeles now that we have fluoridation? No, there's plenty. How many have gone bankrupt here in Port Angeles? It wasn't because there was fluoride. If they went bankrupt, it was because they were spending too much money. Forks. Why is Forks fluoridated? Well, I'll give you 2 reasons. One, they've been doing it for over 50 years, best of my understanding. And I contacted them and said, can I come and talk to you? None of them have responded. I like the city here who said, okay, let's talk about it. Forks, they don't want to talk about it. They don't want to have anything to do with it. They just want to fluoridate because they trust. So you know, they've done it for a long time. They think it's beneficial. Maybe I'll get a chance to talk to them sometime, but they don't want to talk to me.
I mean, if we go 15 minutes longer,
Pardon?
Andrew?
Yes, I was just going to say, Madam Chairman, I see we have a few questions stacked up. I move that pertinent to our bylaws, we extend up to 15 minutes.
Second.
All those in favor, please say aye.
And I'm not offended if anybody needs to leave. So that's fine.
There's 2 questions.
You might be offended, but I'm not. Okay, that's.
I want to know who that dentist is that charges $30.
How much do you have to pay?
Well, I'm an old timer, so I'm on Medicare.
They won't pay for on Medicare. This comes out of your pocket. So yeah, it's just the
My
floor.
last visit was $4,000.
Is that? I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
I had to put the rest of it in my old beat-up truck.
My dad's at 92, and he just went to the dentist, and they told him it's going to be $5,000. He said, Bill, this is crazy. You have to put yourself out to pasture. You have to come along and say, this is it for me, I'm not going to do anymore. And if you don't want to do more, the dentist needs to respect that, okay? But it's not the dentist's job to say that you're not going to live very long. So, you know, there are options. You don't have to go through all of that. You can say no.
So if all this stuff is as bad as you say, and the government is advocating for it, more or less?
No, the federal government doesn't.
Well, then why is it even existing?
That's because my professions, both dentists and public health, think that it's beneficial. It's been traditional from a long time, and this is a tradition, like the flat earth theory, like bloodletting. This is a public health blunder that nobody's willing to look at.
There must be money.
So all these other dentists are just dumb.
No, they're busy.
But you're smart.
Oh, hey. Well, I'm smarter than I was, and I'm still dumb. Okay, I don't want to disparage them, but hang on a second.
I'm having trouble getting around that.
Okay. So here's the thing. They're going to say, trust us. Trust.
Fine.
And well, so you vote yes. And I'm saying,
What's their benefit? Why do they do that? What's in it for them?
because they've been promoting it for many, many years, it's an altruistic feeling. I promoted it because it made me feel like I was helping the community, not just raking them for $5,000. I was trying to prevent the problems. I actually had a game with my assistant where I would look at the teeth of a new patient and say, this person came from that address area, and this person came from that area? How could I tell by looking at the teeth where they were? By fluoride, I thought. And I had this game when I was about 80, 85% correct, and where I could guess where they were. And what was I looking at? The hard shininess of what I thought was fluoride. But you know what? After looking at the research more, I realized what I was doing is I was comparing the low socioeconomic and the high socioeconomic, and I thought it was fluoride. In the old days where they had the naturally occurring fluoride, it also comes with lots of calcium, lots of minerals. Those teeth were a lot harder, and people said, well, it's the hard water, not the fluoride. And the fluoride promoters said, it's the fluoride. Partly because, and I don't want to get into conspiracy stuff, but during World War II, we needed to make a bomb, a nuclear bomb, to protect the United States. And they had two choices. Either make the bomb fast and quick and dirty, or use all kinds of precautions and protection for the manufacturer. And it'll take another year or two to do that. And the choice was, we've got to stop the dying overseas. And if a few people, researchers here die, okay, so the research that was done in the beginning finding harm was put into the Manhattan Project. And it's only been recently that we've been able to look back and say, oh, they knew about this all along. It's just that it was protected, because fluoride is very, very powerful. It's excellent lubricant. It's used for Teflon pans. It's wonderful, wonderful element, but it's also great for enriching uranium.
My question goes to public health policy. So let me say to start with, this is not pro or anti-fluoride. What I'm concerned is let's say everything you showed us is true, and fluoride is very bad. The city is going out to a survey of the population, and we already have a council person saying that's how it votes. You're out there promoting us to vote. You keep talking about best science. Is this how we want best science, to go out to a public survey? What if the survey says yes, fluoride? So the direct question is this the way to conduct public health policy, through putting your finger to the wind and seeing how an unscientific survey comes back?
The Supreme Court of Washington, Port Angeles, and the voter, and our water, our choice, whatever that group is called, they had a fight 10 years ago. They went to the Supreme Court of Washington. The Supreme Court of Washington said, it's not the voters. I agree with the Supreme Court. Exactly to your point. It's not the voters who are to decide this. This is the city council who's decided. And at the time, the city council was going, whoa, we get to make that choice and we know what's best for you. Hang on a second. But you also have the responsibility now to look at the science and to make a very careful decision. And I think to make that decision properly, you're right. It's not the voters who should choose this. What should be choosing it is the Food and Drug Administration. And the city should go to the Food and Drug Administration. I don't think it would cost that much. I started to make the application and try to get the waiver for the fees, because if you are of a reasonable public health and service, if this is important to the public, you can get that fee waived. They never responded to me. They contacted me again, and they said, are you still willing to make application? I said, yes, I'm willing to make application. This is valid. Well, are you actually a water producer right now? Are you a city, or are you a purveyor? Are you manufacturing water right now? And I said, no. Well, we're only going to deal with water, the manufacturers. And I go, okay, so if the city came along and said to me, Bill, work with me. I'd do it at no charge. I'd get Dr. Locke to join in. Let's all get together as a team and send the best that we have. CDC, American Dental Association, American Medical Association, let's get everybody together and send that information to the FDA and ask for approval. If they approve it, you can see it takes a lot of wind out of my sails. I mean, I would still say, well, why? What's happening here? But I don't think they'll approve it unless they had a label such as, do not swallow more than one glass. Do not use this for infants. If you have, and you know on TV what they talk about with drugs, My goodness, most of the commercial for a drug it goes on and on and on for the commercial. Well, they're going to have a long list on the label, but at least they would be giving us information so that we would have informed consent as consumers that this is some of the problems. So I don't think the voters should be involved with making this kind of decision.
I don't either.
I don't think the city council, sorry, are there city council here? Okay.
They left.
I don't, okay. I don't really think I trust the city council to prescribe me a drug, okay? I mean, I even question my physician. If my physician says, here, take this drug, I go, well, let me look it up a little bit. Let me find out for myself. And then I might quiz them a little bit on it because I want to have an informed choice. And I don't think that any on the city council, even if they're physicians, pharmacists, pharmacologists, that they really have the right. And none of them. I can't prescribe any of you fluoride. I can't. Why? Because you're not a patient of record of mine. You come and see me as a patient, I can talk to you, give you the information, good and bad, your patient of record, then I can prescribe it for you. Yeah.
So you started your talk with freedom of choice, and you just referred to informed choice just now. And let's say that all of the science says there's a really great benefit to fluoride for very little risk. An example I would use vaccinations. Okay, so if the science says this is really good, should the law say you have to do it, or should it be done?
Exactly. That's, again, a very astute question. The Public Health Service, the city, has the legal right, the courts have said this over and over again, they have the legal right to use police power to do whatever they want when it comes to public health. They have carte blanche. They can do whatever they want. But the courts have also said that it can only be for a highly contagious disease. Well, it's true that bacteria can go from mom to child, from dad to child, from siblings back and forth. So it is the bacteria transmitted, but everybody has it. It's not like it's highly contagious, and it needs to be lethal. So if Ebola came into town, I would expect the city to say, we're going to put these people in quarantine. Let's take care of them, let's do well with them, but we're not going to have them run around town. That's the city public health right. But to sit there and say, in water, for instance, is like saying, I'm going to have the local police go to everybody's door and say, here's the pill, open your mouth, boop, there you go, now swallow that. They have a right to do that, but that's what they're doing in the water.
At the forums, the dentist side kept getting up and complaining about all the dental caries that they've seen in the city over the last 10 years, complaining. If fluoride was working, wouldn't it be less tooth decay?
That's a really good point. That's a really good point. Where is my slide? Well, I'll just use this one right here. Okay. Now, Dr. Pollack said, but after 10 years, aren't you better off with fluoride? Well, yeah. These people here said, yeah, I'm better off than my parents. And these people here said, yeah, I'm better off than my parents. Had nothing to do with fluoride. And these here said, yes, was better off. And these people here, yes, better off. Did it have anything to do, did fluoride help there? Maybe, maybe not. But wasn't this steamroller of crushing decay going all the way along here? And what about here? All these countries that don't fluoridate and do fluoridate, they all are saying, well, yeah, we're better off. We're better off now. Yeah, we're better off now. But it has nothing to do with fluoridation. It has nothing to do with fluoride. Yeah.
Follow up to the second to last question, the liberty question. Again, assuming, for the sake of argument, that everything Dr. Pollack says is correct and all the scientific studies that you brought forward happen to be mistaken, is this something where you can get similar or the same benefits if you choose to ingest fluoride in pill form, which would make the argument that those who want it can get the benefits? I mean, when my children were small, because I didn't know any better, I followed my dentist's advice and we got pills that Jim's Pharmacy handed out for free to anybody who wanted them. And for a couple of years, they swallowed a fluoride pill every day. So people who, but how is it different from ingesting it in the water versus swallowing a pill that is dissolved in the stomach, if you think the effect is a good one?
There's two sides to that, of course. The first part of that is I did the same thing. I gave my children fluoride. Okay, well, the older one more than the younger one because I kept forgetting the younger. But anyway, what I'm looking at is the difference between what the city gives us in the water is an industrial waste product. So it has other toxic things in it. When I get it from the pharmacy, it's going to be a pharmaceutical fluoride. It doesn't have the radionucleotides, the arsenic, the lead, all these other things in it that frequently have. And so when they add it to the water, it's not as pure as what it is at the pill. So the pill is better than the water. However, the pill goes to my stomach and is very concentrated and creates hydrofluoric acid down there, which is really bad for my stomach. So the water from the city is diluted and it doesn't give such a heavy concentration all at one time. So there's benefits to either way. Neither way do I think are good.
I mean, it seems to me the pill, at least you can control the dose better because everybody gets a quarter of a milligram
yes.
as opposed to depending how much water you happen to drink.
That's what the FDA would say, of course. They'd say you can't control the dose because people drink too much, whereas your pill is better, but of course they said it doesn't work. Any other questions?
Let's thank our speaker.
Good.
Thank you very much.
We're on for next week. Thank you all for coming. See you next Tuesday.